leadership. For some accessibility features within Zoom, we have captioning. You can click on the caption icon, and alternatively, you will find a link in the chat to open captions via stream text in a separate window. We do have ASL interpreters with us today. Thank you for your assistance in helping us to facilitate communication. They should be spotlighted and visible to you. Please make sure you're muted when you're not speaking to reduce cross chatter. We do encourage people who are able to use the video feature so we can connect with one another. But if you're not able to use video or unmute yourself, that's totally fine. If you do have a particular concern specific to your situation, and I think this is especially true today as we talk about MUIs and compliance, please let us know. We're happy to talk about your individual situation in a one-on-one setting. And parts of today's session will be recorded. As I said, parts of the session will be recorded, but new this year, we are pausing the recording for the extended Q&A with Assistant Director Nash to allow for a more open discussion. A reminder, at this DODD event, photos, videos, and audio, as I said, will be recorded. By attending, you may be included in these photos, videos, and audio. Your attendance at this event grants you permission to be in these photos, videos, or audio, which may be used for educational, archival, or promotional purposes. Having said that, I'd like an opportunity for us all to get to know one another. If you would like, feel free to use the chat feature to let us know your name, what county you're from. And I thought, with it being so close to Valentine's Day, we could share ways that we demonstrate we care about or love someone. And for me, I'm a foodie. I really love food. So one of my favorite ways to do this is to have a good meal with someone.
My name is Alicia. Are we typing in the chat? Are we
in the chat, please? Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, thank you. So we've got Anne. She works for DODD, but she's in Knox and she loves to cook. Kim Gibbons, thank you for joining us from Noble County. And Jeanette Welsh is joining us. A lot of good activity in chat. And Alicia Hopkins is in Southwest Ohio. I love to make and send people cards. Excellent. We can, I'm going to move us forward if that's okay. Since we're in 2025, I wanted to take this opportunity and briefly review the goals for Disability Connect as we move forward and grow the initiative. One of our primary goals is to connect people living with disabilities to DoD leadership and the administrative team. You know, we're committed to the open-ended Q&A during Disability Connect, and having that opportunity to provide direct feedback to leadership is important. And it also allows us to provide updates and information from leadership and the DoD internal teams. But most importantly, from our standpoint, it's an opportunity for you to share your experiences and for us to learn what's going well, what may not be going well. And this helps us improve our policies and programs and gather feedback. And now I would like to move the discussion forward to understanding major unusual incidents and compliance discussion. And I'd like to welcome Scott Phillips, Assistant Deputy Director, and Lisa Burt, Assistant Director for the Office of Complaints. Have they, let me see if I can find them. Yeah, seeing that. One moment, please. Let me see. Have Lisa and Scott? I'm sorry, everyone. Thank you for your patience.
Are you trying to unmute Scott?
I let's. He should have the ability to unmute himself.
I think I've got it, Nate. I think if you guys can hear me, I think I'm good to go.
We got.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Without further ado, Scott Phillips, the ADD for the MUI and Registry Unit.
Awesome. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to share information today. And most of all, thanks to all of you who are attending. We really appreciate you more than you know. Thank you for spending some time with us and taking time, out of your busy day. Let me start before I get into the meat of my information. How many people got to see that Super Bowl? I don't want you to call it a stinker bowl because it didn't come out to be exactly what you were hoping, I know. And we thought it was going to be a good game. And my son and I were a little disappointed that Kansas City didn't show up. But the good news was we still had those good commercials, right? Did you get a chance to check out some of those good commercials? Hope you had a favorite, and I hope you were able to enjoy some time with family and just have some fun around the Super Bowl. Again, guys, my name is Scott Phillips. I manage the MUI unit here with the department. Nate had asked me to take a little bit of time just to kind of walk through our MUI process. And to start off, I think it's so important for you guys to know that the reason the MUI process, the UI process exists is to try to protect the health and welfare of folks in Ohio. We want to try to make sure that people are healthy and well. And first and foremost, as the slide shows here, you've got a right to be healthy and well and to be safe and to be treated with dignity and to be treated with respect. And our expectation in managing this system is to try to make sure that that indeed happens, that you're protected, that your rights are certainly identified, and that people are safe and supported within our system. And obviously abuse or any kind of mistreatment like that isn't acceptable ever. And I know you guys know, and I've talked to Nate a lot about this. You talk a lot about rights, and even though that's not what the presentation's about today, you do know the importance of your rights and being able to make sure that you can live your best life and do it in a way that makes the most sense to you. And what we want to do is make sure that our incident reporting system, our critical incident reporting system, supports you and what you want to do and tries to help you to make sure that you're healthy and well. So let's go ahead and move to that next slide. I want to talk a little bit about abuse. There's physical abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's emotional abuse, and none of it is something that anybody should ever have to deal with. And we want to make sure that you know that it's not acceptable. And if anything like this is happening, that it's important for you to make sure that you take appropriate action to let somebody know what's happening. And abuse can show up in different ways. It can be the way that someone treats you, the way they speak to you, if they physically are aggressive to you. They prevent you from doing the things that you want to do that impact your health and welfare. Maybe they touch you inappropriately when you don't want to be touched. These are all things that if something like that happens, it should not happen, and you should make sure that you report it to someone and you get the help and assistance that you need certainly right away. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that happens and what takes place as we kind of get through our slides today. So next slide there. So what can you do if something happens? If you feel like you're being in a situation where you're being abused, you're being taken advantage of, first thing you want to do is tell somebody, right? tell a trusted person. If it's a family member or a friend or support staff person, somebody you're close to, make sure you let them know, because Ohio has a tremendous system for following up and taking action when this stuff happens, but it only is as good as what's reported, right? So if you don't report and you don't tell somebody what's happening, then our system isn't going to be able to step in and really offer you some support and assistance. So you got to tell somebody, and you need to make sure that you feel safe and seek that help immediately. Especially if it's a situation where, you know, you're being assaulted or you have a bad injury, you guys know you can call 911, right? First, you need to get your immediate assistance and immediate help, and calling 911 to get the police or the EMTs there to help you is really critical. And that's the first step. And then we want to make sure that, again, that you report this information to those folks that can help you. And that is the family member, a friend, a provider of service, somebody that you're close with, to make sure that action is taken to get you the help and support that you need. Next slide. So let's talk about MUIs. You know, we hear that term, major unusual incident, a lot, and here's kind of the definition. It's a serious event that affects your health and welfare or your health and well-being. And we got some examples here of physical abuse, neglect, you know, a serious injury. Maybe a person is missing and can't be found. Maybe somebody gets charged or incarcerated or arrested. Maybe you just get some injuries. There's 19 different MUIs within our system, each one of them impacting health and welfare in various different ways. And all of them are reportable incidents that are going to require that there's an administrative investigation or some follow-up to try to check into what happened, to make sure that we identify, you know, what were the causes or contributing factors that led up to that issue, so that we can try to prevent that from happening again. And I really want to describe the major unusual incident system, or the critical incident reporting system in Ohio, as a quality health and welfare improvement process. That means that something happens, and maybe something that's tough. Maybe it's a physical injury, or it's a significant issue that happens, and we want to try to resolve it. And we want to try to resolve that issue for you now. And we also want to try to make sure that it's resolved for you in the future, so that it doesn't happen again. And I think that's what one of the key components of either a major unusual incident or an unusual incident is, to take a look into what happened, talk to the people that were around when it happened, get some information about what took place, and then really try to identify, you know, what were the root causes, or what really caused those things to happen, so that we can put things in place as a system, as your team, as your family, as your support staff, to try to keep those things from happening to you again. And that's, when you think about a quality health and welfare improvement process, that's really what that means. You know, we all know that tough stuff is going to happen occasionally to us. It happens to everybody. But what we want to make sure is that in Ohio, if it does, you've got good, strong supports and people that are there looking out for you to try to make sure that that situation is identified, looked into, and hopefully prevented from happening again in the future. Next slide. So we also have what's called unusual incidents. You guys know there is a little difference between a major unusual incident and an unusual incident. And the difference really is in the severity of what's taking place. MUIs are identified and are very significant, and certainly we want to make sure that there's good follow-up associated with that. UIs, though, are also very important, because sometimes, even though it may not rise to the level of a reportable MUI, it could be leading to or a result of something that might move forward. And so unusual incidents are really critical to be looked into. And those can be as simple as, you know, you fall down and scratch your knee, you trip off the curb and roll your ankle, but you're pretty good. Just things that happen to make sure that, you know, it could impact your health and welfare, but it's not as significant as a formal MUI, or it doesn't rise to that level of the definition. So but UIs are critical, and providers of service, your provider is going to be working really closely with you if you have what's called an unusual incident. And the process is the same. You know, you want to look into what took place, and you want to try to figure out, let's say it was a situation where you tripped and fell and you scratched your knee. You know, what were maybe some things that led up to that? Was it an uneven surface? You know, was there a throw rug that was there that you slipped on or tripped on? Maybe was there some water that fell on the floor that caused you to slip or trip? all those kind of things are going to be causes that we want to look at to try to make sure that those kind of things don't happen again, and that you're going to be healthy and well and protected. And so there is some differences in UIs and MUIs. Major unusual incidents are investigated by the county board, by someone called an investigative agent or an IA. And that's somebody that's just received really significant training into looking into what happened to try to do some root cause analysis and try to figure out what happened to keep it from happening to you again. And they understand how to make sure they get information from people, collect information, find out what happened, and really dig into it, and then come up with an outcome to try to keep that from happening again, so that you and your team can work together to try to make sure that those kind of things are prevented. So that really is kind of a, a high level view of kind of our UI and our MUI process. But the key components to remember, guys, is you got to report. If people don't know what's happening, and if people don't know that you're dealing with, some things that are impacting your health and welfare, then they can't follow up and look into it and find out what happened. As I mentioned, we've got a really, really good system, but it's only as good as we make information available and then do that follow up to try to make sure that people are protected. So it is a significant system. It's one that a lot of time and a lot of attention is paid to in terms of training and outcomes, but also one that Ohio takes very seriously, because we want folks to be protected and to make sure that you feel safe in everything that you're doing in your life every day. All right, next slide. So why are they reported? We want to make sure that your safety is ensured, and there's follow-up investigation to look at those risks, identify those causes and contributing factors that might have led to whatever the incident might be. We also want people to be accountable. I mean, we've got an obligation to provide services to folks to make sure they're healthy and well. And by reporting, we ensure that those appropriate actions take place and follow-up happens. And at the end of the day, if we do a good job of looking into these issues as they arise and prevent them from happening in the future, that's going to lead us to a stronger support system and a higher quality of life for everybody that takes part in it. And that's really what we want. We want people to be able to enjoy their life, do what they want to do, and do it in as safe a way as possible. And to me, that's really what the system is about, and why Ohio takes this this follow-up so seriously, to make sure that we're there to protect folks. Next slide. So who reports? Sometimes we wonder about who is reporting, and certainly if something happens to you, you can report, and you should report. And we've talked already about several ways that you can do that, but everybody has a role. If you're a provider, or you work for a county board, or you work for the department, you are considered a mandatory reporter. And so if these kind of things happen and we become aware of it, we've got to report it. As I mentioned, our system is only as good as what information comes forward. And so once it comes forward, if it meets criteria for a UI or an MUI, then there's going to be good follow-up and good intervention to try to prevent those things from happening in the future. And there's a lot of, as I mentioned, training that happens for folks that are looking into UIs and MUIs. The department, through the MUI unit, participates in multiple trainings throughout the year to train those people that are looking into these situations, to make sure that we do a good job of capturing the right information so that we can share with the teams what we found and make sure that the teams can help assure people's health and welfare moving forward. So that's why it's important that mandatory reporters and you do a good job of sharing information if something like that were to happen to you. Next slide. So how do you report? Lots of ways to report. We want to make it as easy as possible, so you can contact your county board. And there's some links, I think, within the information here. I think, Nate, you can provide that, or we'll provide whatever information, but there's a link that can take you to all your county boards, so you can call directly. And that's, the county boards have a 24-hour hotline that you can call if you've got a concern that you need to share at any time. We have an abuse neglect hotline at the department, and we've got a phone number there listed for you. You can submit a report online at dodd.ohio.gov, and you can submit that report there. And obviously, as we mentioned earlier, if it's something that's an immediate and urgent thing, you call 911 and you get that help that you need right away first, whether that's the police, whether that's emergency personnel, whoever it is that you need. Call those folks first, and then make sure that other information is reported, so some significant follow-up can happen after that. So multiple ways to report, very easy. to report in any of these methods. Next slide. And this is just kind of the wrap-up slide in terms of kind of the things we've talked about throughout. And this is that quality health and welfare improvement process that I talked about. So step one there shows that we have an incident happens. And let's just utilize, that you fall and maybe you have a significant injury. Then the next step is the immediate action. So you want to make sure that you're okay physically. If you need the EMT to look at your ankle or your leg or see what happens, that's the immediate action. And then that information needs to be reported so it can be looked into. And that next step would be that administrative investigation piece where either your provider or someone from the county board would come out and talk to you about what happened, try to figure out, who was there, who witnessed it, and try to figure out what we can do to prevent that from happening again. And that goes into the next step of 4 and 5. That investigation or that person coming out to take a look at what happened is really going to gather all the facts and all the information that they can to find out what happened, what caused it, and most importantly, to try to prevent that from happening to you or somebody else again. And that's that quality health and welfare improvement process loop that we talked about. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a UI or if it's an MUI. These are the steps that should happen to kind of walk us through the process to make sure that information is reported and looked into. All right, I think that was the last slide for the MUI UI process. And Nate, I don't know how you want to handle this. We're gonna go right into Lisa, or do you want to talk about any questions, or how do you want to do that?
We do have 4 or 5 questions in chat, so it's up to you and Lisa. If we want Lisa to get through her slides, and then we can circle back and address all of the questions when she finishes, that's fine.
That sounds like a good plan. Let's go ahead and move to Lisa, and then we'll catch all the questions at the end.
Fair enough. Hopefully, hi everyone. My name's Lisa Burt, and I am in the Office of Compliance. I'm the Assistant Deputy Director. Next slide. I wanted to spend a few moments talking to you today about the work that we do in our compliance office. So one of the goals is to ensure a qualified pool of providers are available to provide services to you and in support of your family. And also to confirm that the county board processes support person-centered assessment, planning, and monitoring of the home and community-based waiver services. And so both of those are pretty much a mouthful. So I wanted to share with you how we have assigned our staff around the state of Ohio. We have, I'm the Assistant Deputy Director, but in each of the colored regions, you guys will see that there's yellow, purple, pink, blue, green. We have managers assigned to each of those areas. If you have questions about county boards or concerns, you can share them with those managers assigned. So let's go through Region 1 and 2. Angel Morgan is the compliance review manager or provider compliance. And then Tina Haggerty is the accreditation manager. And accreditation means county board reviews. In Region 3 and 4, Mandy Brooks is the provider compliance review manager, and Katie Willie supports her as well. Region 5 and 6, Katie Willie and Julie Gregg. So that's how we're kind of divided around the state of Ohio. Next slide. So I just wanted to break down some of the things that we do in compliance. So the first thing is provider compliance reviews. We review independent providers and agency providers. We're determining if services are being provided as requested, and that request comes through the format of the ISP. So that is the direction that the provider is given. Hopefully, we've gotten that from you and or your family. And then the provider is providing those things within the context of the assorted rules that apply to that. We look at all waiver requirements. So the waiver, home and community-based waiver system has a lot of elements that go along with that. So we're measuring some of those as we go through the process. We're looking to see that services are documented as required, that staff have the personnel training and other training to provide the best possible support. And then we interview person served, and sometimes the interview also occurs with family or a person identified by the individual that they'd like to have present. And then we conduct observations of the supports in action. We want to see that the person's choices are reflected in how services are delivered, that they are getting the supports in a way that they would like to have, that they're having the opportunity to do the things that they want to do. Next slide. With accreditation or county board reviews, we're looking carefully at person-centered planning. And person-centered planning is a real big piece that really kind of starts the whole process. The person-centered planning should reflect the wants and needs of the individual, that people are doing supports again in the ways that make sense for that person, that fit in conjunction with the way they want to live their lives. That again, we're looking at those home and community-based waiver requirements, that those requirements are being met and upheld. So that means that people have the access to the things that they want and need in the timelines that they've identified, at the frequency that they'd like to see the service. We also talk about service monitoring. Now, this is a big thing because with service monitoring, we want to make sure that we've identified a number of goals in your plan, but are those happening in a way that makes sense to you? Are they happening at the frequency you'd like to see them? Are you getting to do the things that you want to do? We're going to ask a lot of questions about those. We also do interviews of persons served, and again, anyone else that they'd like to have present, family, friends, a particular person in mind. And then we interview the staff of the agency because we're making sure that they have access to training, that they're able to get training on new and innovative techniques, technology. There's a lot that's changing in our fast moving system, and we want to make sure that they're getting the access needed in order to complete these assessments and processes appropriately. Next slide. So in this slide, I wanted to share with you some of the questions that you might be asked. There are no wrong answers here. We want people to be able to share openly and honestly about their experience. We generically share, we kind of strip away who said it, and we give that information back to the board so they can improve how they deliver services. So if we ask you a question like, do you know your SSA? I met someone recently who said, no, I think they've changed and they haven't let me know who the new one is. That's important information to get back to the county board, because that leaving you in limbo is not an okay process. It doesn't necessarily violate a rule, but it is important in relationship building and making sure that you know who to call in the event you have an emergency, need something changed in your plan. We also talk about, do you like the services you receive? Oftentimes people share with us that yes, they do, but then we'll see a series of refusals where they just didn't want to participate. And we might ask them, hey, you don't seem to like this particular thing. Have you shared that with your SSA? We often ask questions like, do you get to decorate your home the way you would like? There are limits when you rent. When you rent an apartment, your lease will tell you what you can and cannot do, but they shouldn't govern your comings and goings. They shouldn't govern whether or not you're able to put a picture on the wall. They may decide how you put the picture on the wall, but not that you can't decorate it in the way you like. For many, can you access food at any time? Now, there are some folks that have very specialized food needs, and they may need support, but generally, are you able to get a snack or a meal at the time of your choosing? I know I can't eat late at night, but there are plenty of people who can. Um, were you able to choose your roommate or housemate? Now, many of us, when we're living out on our own, we need to have someone live with us to share the expenses. So, were you able to choose that person? Are you guys getting along? Have you talked about your disagreements? Do you need help to talk about your disagreements? And lastly, are you able to access activities that you would want and choose? Again, that's something that you should be able to do, um, and your ISP should direct your provider to provide those at the time that that you would like to have them and need them. Okay. Next slide. So, how can we do this well, and how can we work together? We meet often with self-advocacy groups. We present at many conferences to just talk about and educate people on the rules surrounding a particular program, access to the program, what are the guidelines, who do you talk to get it, how is it used, and those kinds of things. So we do that often, and that communication really helps because when it's not working correctly, we're able to help guide people back to the parties that they need to have that conversation with. And sometimes we can have this conversation if you're selected as a part of the compliance review. And so let me tell you what the sample process is about. We select a sampling of all individuals receiving a service, an HCBS waiver service in a county, and by selecting them, we then take a deeper dive to look at their plan, see the location that they are receiving the service in, have a discussion with the individual and their family or guardians, and we talk to them about whether or not that service and their overall satisfaction. So if you're selected to be a part of a sample, you do have the choice to say, you know what, I'm not interested in an interview. But generally, people do participate. They share the good, and the things that they're excited about, and they also share things that they believe need a little more work. We then have those discussions with SSAs and local leadership so that we can share back some of the feedback that we're hearing of what's working and what's not working. It's really helpful to them to be able to hear that. But then we also take that information and we take it back to state leaders so they also can hear what's working and what's not working. Sometimes there are rules preventing activities that we would all agree we might want to see, and there may be some adjustments that leadership would recommend that we do. But oftentimes, it's our effort to communicate both directions, up and down, to make sure that everyone is hearing if something is successful or if something is not successful. So, compliance is pretty broad in how we approach our work. We do look at all applicable rules, but in our tools, and you'll see that on the next slide, we've included some links so that you can go see additional resources. You can look at our review tools and see the kinds of questions that we're asking about in areas of our focus. If you're working with a provider and they're worried about their upcoming review, I'd suggest sharing this with them because these are some of the things that we're happy to provide those resources on our website to make sure that they know what they need to do to be in compliance with the rules that we're reviewing currently in our system. We also have a mailbox where we would encourage people to send if you have questions. Sometimes we're not the right party to answer the question, so you might get a response back that, hey, we forwarded this on to the local county board because they're the best persons to answer the question. But if you have a concern or a complaint or a rule-related question, I would really encourage you to use that link, compliance@dodd.ohio.gov. You also have my address, and I've taken a real high-level view because we do a lot in our office. We're often in every county throughout the year. We are meeting with providers, families, individuals, in the course of our daily activity. We have approximately 33 reviewers who work throughout the state of Ohio. And what's nice about that is when they live in the community in which they're doing a review, they have a little more knowledge about how the system might work or the processes that that county board uses, and or sometimes the terminology, because SSAs are called something different in just about every county. And the good part is to make sure that you're aware of what those are. So I think I went through that very quickly on this first pass, but hopefully you'll have me back if you have very specific questions, and I can make sure that we are able to talk through those, talk through the compliance elements if you have questions about those, and get answers to you. So I've left enough time for questions for both of us. So Nate, I'll pass it back over to you.
Yes, we do have several questions in chat here. Alicia is asking a question about if something has been labeled an unusual incident, but new evidence a year later, can an unusual incident be reopened and classified as an MUI?
It's a great question, Alicia, and I'm happy to answer that. And the answer is yes. I mean, the nice thing about a UI and an MUI process is that it's very fluid. And if there's more information that comes about that now classify something from a UI to an MUI, the minute we know that, then we can certainly upgrade that to an MUI, and the appropriate investigation to address that would happen. So it's a very good question, and certainly one that can happen should new information come to light.
Thank you. Alicia also asks, what do you do when reported multiple times? Maybe, I don't know if Alicia, would you be able to clarify this question? Are you able to unmute?
Yeah, sure. Which one was it? 'Cause I asked a couple. Was it, which question was it, Nate?
Something about reporting multiple times.
Yeah, so I just want to ask, like, when you're reporting a MUI multiple times for like the same issue, it's a repeat issue, and it keeps being labeled as a UI, but it's like something that's serious to the person's health and welfare. I mean, where do you take at that point? If if your care plan, they're not, if you're, it's in your care plan, they won't uphold it. I guess, where do you turn? Because I mean, can I just give an example? I don't want to go into my personal situation or anything, but like, say someone has a nutrition plan and it's a medical order and it needs to be upheld. And they, the in the care plan, it states that every week the agency is supposed to help the person meal plan, make sure they go grocery shopping, etc. But then you have repeated UIs over the fact that the menu plan is not being made. The grocery shopping is not being done. The person's going without food repeatedly over and over again. I mean, you probably have 100 UIs over it. At what point is there it's taken seriously and there's changes made? Because I kind of feel like at what point is it not turned into an abuse MUI? And why aren't the county boards, like in that example, taking the situation more seriously?
Got it, Alicia. Appreciate it. It's a good question. Go ahead, Lisa. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I was going to
Sure.
say, so Scott and I work closely closely together, and sometimes things that are reported initially as an MUI and it happens to be a UI, but the person does not feel as if their ISP or their service delivery or the services that they get, in your case, the food, or I mean, in the example you provided, the food or shopping, those are the kinds of things that compliance will then review as a what we call a special, which means it wasn't regularly scheduled. We'll do a review and review the ISP, talk with the individuals involved, talk with any pertinent parties, and look at all of the information to make a decision about whether or not some element of the ISP
So
or
is this a
services need to
compliance
be
that
different.
is this, I don't mean to interrupt, but is this compliance at the state level or at the county level? Because in this situation, the person has reached out to the director of DD, has reached out to Olmsted, has reached out to everyone helpless. I mean, it's to the point that the person's probably going to commit suicide before it's over with, and they're not doing anything. And I guess I'm just trying to ask, like, when is things going to change? I mean, if compliance hasn't get involved and the compliance hasn't gotten involved and like the county's not doing anything, the state's not doing anything, the Medicaid director's not doing anything, where do you turn? Because I mean, it seems like in some situations, like that critical situation for the person, it seems like it's really hardcore. And I just like don't understand how
So
there can be 300 MUIs over nutrition for one person and there's never change. Well, we're
I
not being
can't answer
told to
that
go to the compliance
question
level.
per se, but I'm going to tell you this. If after we're done, if you either send the information to Nate or Meredith, they will get it to me in my office and we'll take a look.
Okay, thanks.
Tisha?
So I have a question. So are we allowed to know the end result of a UI?
Certainly, if that UI involves you and is something that happened, with you or to you, you should know the outcome and you should be a part of the team process and working to try to make sure that it wouldn't happen to you or for you again. And that's the point of having a UI or MUI process, is to gather information and then talk to you about what happened and see how we can prevent it from happening. So definitely you should hear about it. You should know about it. You should be a part of the planning to keep it from happening again.
Okay, because this wasn't now recently, but I reported a MUI a UI, and I didn't get no response back.
Yeah, and so remember when I mentioned the steps, the UIs are investigated by the provider. And so having a conversation with your provider about the outcome, and like I said, hopefully if it's done well, then you should be a part of the process to find out what happened. They should talk to you about it, and there should be some closure at the end for you and for the provider as to what this is what we're going to do moving forward to try to keep this from happening to Letitia in the future. So,
well, I was asking that because that process right there did not happen. And I was asking if that was supposed to happen.
yeah. So once a UI takes place, certainly to find out what happened, getting information from you and getting information from the folks that were maybe with you or might have witnessed what happened to you, that's a part of a good UI investigation. And so if that didn't happen, that's something that should, and certainly is something that, if you'd want to share, with your provider first to try to get that resolved. And if you're not satisfied, you can certainly chat with the county board or share that with the department. And we'd be glad to
I'm
do that
not,
further.
for the particular situation that I'm thinking of, I'm no longer with that agency. And so that I was just wondering, are we allowed to know the end result of a UI?
Absolutely. Yep. Not only are you allowed to know, you should know, and it's all about you to try to keep it from happening again. You got it.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I know I see at least one more hand, but I can't tell. Doug, do you have a question? Do you want to unmute?
And by the way, I would like to say thank you very much for doing this training, because this is something that we as individuals need, so that we know the process in what should happen when a incident occurs.
Well, you're really welcome, Letitia, and we really appreciate you guys having us on board to talk it through. And I think the most important takeaway today is compliance and MUI. All of us are in the business of trying to make sure that people can live their best lives and do it as safely and as effectively as they possibly can. And that's the role for Lisa and I to try to make sure that happens. So we're glad you're here. We're glad you're hearing it. And we're hoping that we're doing a good job systemically at following up and taking care of you.
And I know
Do
I
they,
saw Doug with, okay, you're unmuted. Good.
my question was, when they interview clients such as myself, is there any way to take away the feeling of being intimidated by the investigator? Because a lot of situations, clients like me get tense because they know it's an investigation, but they're nervous to talk about it because they're afraid of making the situation worse, or getting the person that's possibly being investigated into more trouble. What can we do to make the MUI process less intimidating to people so they can tell people the truth? Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, Doug. And I want to let you know we train our investigators across the state all the time, and just had one this past week where we had a good conversation about this. And I want to start off by saying, I think anytime you have somebody maybe that you don't know looking into what happened and asking questions, that can be a little intimidating, right? And I get that, and I hear that from what you're saying.
Yeah.
What we tell our investigators, and what we want to make sure happens systemically, is that our investigators go out and all they're really doing is trying to find facts. They're trying to find out what happened to Doug. They're trying to find out who was there. They're trying to find out what can we do moving forward to make sure that Doug's going to be healthy and well and safe. And our ask of those folks that are looking into this is to do that in the least intrusive way possible, understanding that anytime you have to go out and you talk to people and you know that something rough has happened in somebody's life and you're trying to get a handle on it, that's intimidating just by itself. We got to make sure that we do a good job of letting folks know, and particularly in your example, Doug, that you haven't done anything wrong and that you're sharing the information that you need to share and we want you to share as a result of our system. And that what we're going to do is take it seriously and make sure that you're protected following up. So I don't want it to be intimidating. It's not to be intimidating, but I understand how people feel when somebody maybe that they don't know or they don't know well is coming up and asking people questions about what happened. That's hard to do sometimes, but we want folks to do it in the least intrusive way possible to make sure that you know that it's just about a system that looks out for you and not a situation that is looking to get people in trouble or to cause an issue, because that's not what it's about. It's about finding facts that took place and putting in prevention to keep that from happening to you again. And that's the nuts and bolts of the system. Now, different people collect information different ways, and I get that. But our goal is for people to go out and just have a conversation and take away information from that conversation, use that information to protect you moving forward. Does that make sense?
Can I ask one more question related to that?
Sure.
Is the person being investigated allowed to bring somebody from the outside just to be a support?
Yes, I can answer that because I have a situation going on right now that I have other people as a support system involved in this situation.
Okay.
Yeah, Doug, I wanted to let you know that that is the case. Now, I do want to say this because I think this is fair. You know, certainly you can always have someone there as a support, but I think, you know, the important thing to remember is that that person's there for a support for you, not to speak for you, because we want to hear from you as to what happened and not have somebody that might have a different slant or a different take on what took place. We want to hear from you. And that's, so I know, you know, that makes sense because, you know, we're interviewing or want to talk to you, right?
Well, the reason I emphasize outside of the system, because a lot of our system is so complex and so complicated at times, you don't know if the person that you pick to help you is part of the system that's complex, if you know what I mean by that.
I do. And that's why it's important for you to pick someone that you're comfortable with, you know, to be there and to support you. But that makes perfect sense. And Doug, I really appreciate you bringing this up because we want to make sure that.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. We want to make sure that this system is user-friendly for you, user-friendly for your friends or family, and trying to make sure that we capture the information that we need just to make sure that you're going to be healthy and well and protect you, right?
Well, I would, if you don't mind me saying so, I would like that part of it to be reviewed to see if we can improve it some way.
I mean, your point, like I said, your point is well taken. It's one that we talk about a lot with training when we're training our investigators and training our providers that do UI investigations. So, and we'll continue to do that to try to make sure that, you know, it's sometimes hard to get information. You have to do it, but do it in the least intrusive way possible and in the most supportive way possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Doug.
All right. This is such a meaningful conversation. I appreciate you so much, Scott and Lisa, for your insights and the attendees for your candor. I do want to move us forward to respect our time together and also acknowledge Assistant Director Dash is on the call and going to provide us a budget update. And then also we will pause the recording for some Q&A with her as well. I don't know if while Assistant Director Dash is prepping, if we have any OLN updates that we could get to quickly. Or if she's ready, we could just move directly into Assistant Director Dash.
Hi, Nate. I am ready if you all are ready for me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with all of you. Been on for the last hour and really appreciate the conversation. I just want to talk briefly about the budget process for those of you who might kind of want an update on where we are And Nate, do you have a graphic that you, as part of the presentation, that you were going to
Yes,
share?
there is a graphic in the slide deck that
Okay,
explains the budget process.
okay. And so I'll just talk generally about some of the big initiatives in this budget, and then Nate has displayed the timeline. And so you can see it's really almost a one-year process that happens before we get a budget finalized. So you can see, looking at this timeline, we started work on this current budget last July. And looking at priorities, looking at projecting funding, all of those things that you do, meet with stakeholders, talk about our priorities, and then through the fall, engaged in drafting and submitting to the Office of Budget and Management, into the governor's office up until December, through January. And then I think some of you may know, last week, the governor held a press conference kind of outlining the budget. And then just today, the language of the budget was released. And we will include the link to that on our dedicated budget website so you can see it. It's a very lengthy PDF document. It's about 4,000 pages, but it has all of the budget language contained therein. And if you're interested in looking at that level of detail, you certainly can. We will also convey relevant details to you all as it progresses. And so as it progresses, when you look at the slide, we are in mid-February. So we're at the point of the director giving testimony before the House Finance Committee in a couple of weeks. That testimony will continue in front of the House through February, March, and April. And you'll see that on the slide under the pink ribbon. And then it'll move over to hearings and testimony in front of the Senate in April, May, and June. Sometime in June, there will be a conference that will resolve the differences between the two. And then the final budget is usually signed right before July 1st. And so that is the timeline we're operating on, and that's what we're anticipating. So hopefully this slide is helpful to you all to keep those things in mind. If you are inclined to advocate, either in person or in writing, whatever is best for you, you can do that at any stage in the testimony before the House budget or the Senate budget. So just keep those two blocks of time in your mind. And again, we will communicate regularly to everyone as the budget moves through. But just some things I wanted to highlight. This current budget is maintaining the historic investments that we had from the previous budget. And so in addition to, the provider rates on the waiver side and the provider funding on ICF side, we have maintained the dedicated funding lines for employment first, for technology first, and multi-system youth. And so as the budget process moves on, we will communicate details about how those funding lines will work and what projects those will fund going into the next couple of years. We're also able through this budget to build some capacity in our ICFs and the intermediate care facilities for folks who are dependent on vent care, so that they can be served in those settings rather than in a hospital or a more restrictive setting. We're also pleased to see that this budget allows for an increase in the personal needs allowance for individuals living in an ICF. The personal needs allowance was previously $50, and we're looking for it to be increased to $100. And last, but certainly not least, one of the things that we're most excited about is the introduction of the language for supported decision-making. And I know a lot of you probably know supported decision-making and what that is, but just in general, it's a process where individuals with disabilities can make their own life choices, but with the help of friends, family, trusted supporters that can help them in making those informed decisions. That language is in the budget bill that I mentioned earlier that we will also link to on our website. Those are new statutory provisions in the Ohio Revised Code. and all the specifics of supported decision-making are laid out there. But two things I wanted to highlight for you all is that you'll see in the language that DODD is going to take a pretty active role in this and doing a couple of things. One, we're going to develop and distribute a model or template for a supported decision-making plan. And this will be a tool that folks can use. They won't be required to, but can use if that works for them. We're also going to distribute a lot of information. It'll probably be the subject of future meetings here, but on supported decision making, and get some materials and resources to everyone so they really understand what it is and what it's intended to do. So, oh, great. So Nate has put up the links to the dedicated budget website on DODD's website, and then also a link to the Ohio channel. This is where you can watch all of that testimony I referenced in front of the House and the Senate that's going to happen between now and June. That's the website that will display all of that. And so that is just generally the overview I wanted to give everyone about the budget. And we
Okay.
can... Oh, go
Thank
ahead.
you so much, Assistant Director Nash. I want to point out a